Awesome. Thank you for waiting. So welcome again to our seventh career day. This is, of course, our first career day for 2022. And so we're glad to have you back for those of you who weren't at our event or demo day last Saturday or the WordPress event. As you know, our career day events are geared towards creating a space for professionals, intermediate to beginner level, and students to learn about different careers and fields and roles within the tech space, how you can land a job in those positions, and also what tips you can utilize to own your own craft, your own skill set, and advance your own careers. Today, we will be focusing on UI UX design, and we have two very experienced speakers waiting to speak to you. We'll get to that very, very soon. But before, I'm just going to do the general introductions for the community. With us this evening, we have Nicholas Key, the co-founder of Asub Limited, or primary event sponsor. He is an entrepreneurial polymath who cares very deeply about the things that disrupt the narrative. He has led several business initiatives and was formerly on the executive board for Next Gen Creators. We also have with us our founder for Jamaican Developers Community and co-founder of Asub Limited, O'Shane Bailey, who is a full stack engineer that has worked with both government and private sector organizations for over a decade in tech. And of course, myself, Latifa Smelly, I am the communications officer for Jamaican Developers. And as I say in every meetup, if you have any concerns, any questions, you can reach out to me on social media or in our developer group. You can also reach out to me if you're interested in demoing any of your projects at our demo day events. Okay, so today I won't waste any more of your time. We are focusing on UI UX design, and today to take us through those roles, we have with us Janice Alexander and Brittney Samuels, both very experienced at what they do. And of course, we're very glad that they were not only working on themselves and furthering their own career paths, but took it up on themselves to think about what our community could be and how they could improve our local UI UX space and increase awareness of the importance of UI UX design by starting the UX UI Designer Network Jamaica. Of course, they will tell you more about about their organization and how you can join. For those who joined earlier, the link should be in the chat if you'd like to join their network, and of course we'll paste it again shortly after this. So first we have Janice Alexander. She is a product designer who is passionate about creating people-first products that solve real-world problems. And this is why she made the switch from her former job as a marketer to becoming a UX designer, which we are very glad for, leveraging her interest in human psychology to build more intuitive products. She is currently a UX designer for the Grace Kennedy Group. And next, also with her, we have Brittney Samuels, who is her co-lead for one of her co-leads for the UI UX Designer Network, and also a senior UI UX professional who's currently managing the UI UX team for Sagicor Group Jamaica Limited. She has a Master of Science in Information Systems and is a certified project management professional. Brittney has led and contributed to several UX projects from large to small scale Jamaican institutions, including startups. And not to mention, she definitely has a deep and profound passion for humanizing every digital experience. These accreditations and interests, I tell you, for both of our speakers today are definitely what we want to see in our UI UX designers. And without further ado, I welcome you to give them a warm welcome. As usual, you can use the reactions tab in the Zoom bar to use the celebrate emoji. And with that, I'll let them take over. Brittney and Janice.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. So, hold on one second there. Let me just go ahead and move over.
Okay, so while Brittney is sharing her screen, let me just remind you, you can put your questions in the chat if you have any questions during the presentation, but there will also be a question and answer section afterwards. And we'll also ensure to post the links for joining the UI UX Designer Network, as well as the Jamaican Developers Telegram group.
Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now, all right?
Yes, we're seeing.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here today. My name is Brittney Samuels, and I'm joined by Janice Alexander, and we are from the UX UI Designer Network Jamaica. We're also UX UI professionals in the space. As mentioned earlier, I manage a design team, and Janice is a UX designer. And today, we're here to talk to you about kickstarting your career in UX. So let's go. We're going to cover a little bit about our design journeys, what has led us to where we are today, what it's like being a designer or day-to-day, education, training, some skills that you find yourself developing as you progress in your own career, and some key skills that you should think about getting and advancing, as well as what the compensation looks like now in the Jamaican market and some tips for beginners. So let's go, starting with our design journey. So with all great things begins with a bit of knowledge, right? So my educational background is in computer science, and then I went on to do a master's in management of information systems, and then I got project management certified, right? So how did I actually begin in UI UX? So while I was doing my undergraduate degree, I had gotten an opportunity to be an intern for graphic design at university, and that is how I met my first mentor. And he was the UI UX professional for the university. And he said, okay, well, you have some background in tech. Clearly, you're doing a computer science degree, and you have some background in design, which was true because I did visual art all the way up to Cape. So he said, have you ever heard about UX UI? And I said, no, I really haven't heard about it, and introduced it to me. And that's how I got my first internship in UI UX. And then that internship grew into a full-time position at the university, in which I got to work with some awesome people and work on some really great projects. So that is how I got into UI UX. And then a little bit later on, I was more interested in the strategy of design and aligning design UX strategy to the business. And so I decided to pursue a master's degree that would teach me a little bit more on how to align technology and business in order to achieve real tangible value and results. And soon after that, I got a position as a UI UX manager. So some of the requirements for a UI UX manager is, first, you have to have domain knowledge, right? You actually have to understand the UI UX space, especially here in Jamaica when it's still very young. You're going to do quite a bit of education in that space, so you have to really understand it. The second is a bit of business knowledge, right? Because no longer are you zooming in on a particular skill set, but now you're considering the bigger picture. How do we create real value? How do we align what we want to achieve and empathize with the user with what the business wants to achieve? So you have to understand the business domain, the processes involved, the expectations and objectives and so forth. You also need a certain amount of experience. So usually you typically see on a JD, maybe 5 years experience, 10 years of experience for a managerial position. And it's usually because through experience, you gain knowledge and you gain understanding. So you can apply what you have gained throughout your years of practicing to a team and help them also grow. And that brings me to mentorship ability. You have to be able to communicate well and help others achieve their full value. And the last thing I would say, based on the Jamaican context, a formal education in terms of a master's degree doesn't hurt either. Now, I'm not going to tell you that you need a master's degree to be a design manager, or you might see a design leader. They're used interchangeably here in Jamaica, but it helps because you would have a more critical way of thinking, or that is the assumption, right? But you can get there as well through training yourself and adding value to yourself. I'll hand over to Janice so she can speak on her experience.
Hi guys, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here and to share about UX design, which I'm super passionate about. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my journey, not as comprehensive as Brit's, but so between 2014 and 2017, I was doing my BA in integrated marketing and communication. And I think that was my first, I guess, introduction to, I'm going to say web design. I'm not even going to say user experience design, because at that time, I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that was a thing. But to get some additional income, I was dabbling in graphic design, and people were like, hey, I need a site. And so I'm going to jump on Wix. I'm going to jump on WordPress. I'm going to come up with something that look decent-ish, right? And so that was kind of my introduction to even the space. Then when I left UA, I went into marketing because that's what I'm trained in. I was doing marketing and brand management for about 3 years at a startup. But during that time, even though my role was officially marketing, I was wearing a lot of hats. And one of them was leading on design projects, leading on product strategy and design strategy for some of the projects that we would get from clients. And so that helped me to build within my 9 to 5, that kind of UX experience and to learn more about the field. But on top of that, I've always been very entrepreneurial. And so most of my experience is really in working with clients on a one-on-one basis to develop the products that they want to develop. And that really helped me to hone my skill. It also helped me to be able to apply whatever I was learning through the courses that I took and that kind of thing. So last year, I decided, you know what, I like what I've learned in marketing, specifically around how people think, what makes people tick. That's what I really liked about marketing. I have this background in graphic design, similar to Britt. I did art up to CSEC, not Cape, but CSEC. And so I love that part of it as well. And I just saw where this was a great career to merge those two interests to create really products that can be impactful. And so last year I was like, yeah, I think I need to really full on switch from my 9 to 5 as well, straight into product design. And so I started in 2 part-time roles while also balancing some client projects for like web design and such. And then I started in a full-time role at Grace. During that period last year when I made that decision, I realized that there was a gap. I didn't know anybody who did UX design outside of myself. And so I was like, there has to be other people who are doing this. And so I kind of took initiative, and I'm like, even though I don't have 30 years of experience, I'm going to start this group. And I started it, and we're at 100 members, which I'm super excited about, guys. And so that's been going well. So now I'm a UX designer at Grace. And I also, just a fun fact about me, I am an avid collector of like board games. I like to test them out. I like to see if they're fun or not. I like to review them. So that's kind of what I do. No. So I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about what the role entails. And guys, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, please, and we'll respond. So first I want to talk about like what's a general role of UX designers. And I want to say UX design is the umbrella field for all of these roles that you will hear about in a few minutes, right? But essentially what the goal of a UX designer is, or what their main purpose is to figure out how can we make technology that actually solves people's problems. Because I feel like it can be easy to get caught up in I have this idea, I'm going to build it up. And a lot of the times your solution is not the right solution because you're just building it because it's so nice or it look nice. But our role as UX designers is to figure out how do we ensure that the products that we're building, one, people want to use them, and they want to use them because they're solving a real tangible problem and helping them to get to the place that they want to get to. So I'm gonna share a really a short video with you guys called The Mysterious Life of UX Designers. Don't take it too seriously. It's just kind of a glimpse into, I guess, some of the quirkier parts of being a designer. I don't know if you can hear.
Art director, creative leader, idea astronaut. The classification of UX designers is constantly evolving. This example might seem like a new and trendy breed, but this is in fact an old-school UX designer. Notice how the wallpaper on his Macintosh says Comic Sans, but the artwork itself is not composed of that particular font. This is considered funny by his peers. This specimen has unfortunately fallen into a state commonly known as pixel paranoia, as he is contemplating whether this button should be here, or there. This kind of aesthetic compulsory behavior separates him from the UX architect. This peculiar being spends most of his time reading reports, which enables him to answer any question with a reference to a theoretical study. An unfortunate side effect of this obsession is the lack of certain other skill sets. A crucial moment in the lifespan of the UX designer is the usability test. This is where all the hard work can be rendered useless in a matter of seconds. One wrong move from the user, and it's back to the drawing board. Disaster has struck. This designer will have to face a demoralizing process of coming up with a better solution. Devastating. If you spot a UX designer interacting with common human beings, it is likely you are witnessing a ritual known as a workshop. The workshop consists of a small separated pack, writing as much as possible on sticky pieces of paper. This is often followed by the pack decorating the walls of their current habitat with these vibrant colours. Why they display this sort of behaviour, no one knows. These rituals often include awkwardly choreographed exercises assumed to enhance creativity amongst the tiny pack. The result is a quite extraordinary display of human behaviour. Only time will tell how many viable ideas, or maybe yet another creative job title, will come out of this act.
All right, so that was just a short clip I wanted to show because I think it's hilarious, and I feel like if you're a UX designer, you can relate to a lot of this. Or if you've been around UX designers as a developer or as another person on a product team, you've seen us do some of these things, right? So they were talking about visual design with the guy who is a UI designer kind of playing around with the button on the screen. They talked a little bit about a UX architect who technically really looks at like flows and takes in a lot of research, and you can, that kind of thing. They talked about workshopping, which is a big part of our job as well. So these are some really common tasks of UX designers. And as I said, there are a lot of roles that come under this. So you have UI UX designer, which you'll hear, you have UX writers, you have UX architects, UX engineers. There's so many roles that come under this that are often, which is a problem in our area as well, just in terms of people understanding how the roles are different. But the umbrella is, if you are any of those things, you fall under the umbrella of a UX designer. So what do we really do? And I brought this down into a couple points. Or a big part of our responsibility is to understand users and their needs. So I feel like a lot of times when people hear about designers, they're thinking they immediately go to visual. But a big part of our role is to understand users, to do the research, to talk to them, to become familiar with users, so we can understand how they think and build around that, right? You also need to understand business requirements. As a UX designer, typically you're tasked with balancing what the business wants and what the user wants. And you're in the middle trying to make sure that everybody can get what they want. So you also have to spend time working to understand what the business is trying to achieve with this product. You spend a lot of time exploring solutions. So you're doing sketches, you're doing wireframes, you're doing mock-ups, you're doing prototypes, and all that is just a part of your exploration phase to figure out what is the best way to solve this problem that I want to solve. Then you're doing like visual and UI design, which goes down into the nitty-gritty, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, but you're looking at how the design elements come together to form something that is aesthetically pleasing, that works and interacts the way that you want it to, or that the user wants it to. You're doing a lot of collaboration with the product team. UX designers, typically, you have a decent amount of meetings. You have to talk a lot. You have to talk to everybody because your job is to put together, synthesize all of this information from all of these different sources so that you can come up with a solution that works and that's sustainable and that people feel comfortable with. And then there's so much more. There tends to be writing, UX writing, and as I said, like there's so much more things, but I feel like these are the core tasks of UX designers. For me personally, I'll talk a little bit about what I do from this list. There are some things I do, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but they're just common tasks for me. Discovery sessions. So you see, they were doing like some workshop things. I do some of those sessions as well. And these sessions are usually before there is any design. So you're exploring a new idea, you're exploring the possibility of building a product. What do we understand? What do we know? What do we not know? And your job is to kind of pull out that information from the different stakeholders, right? And that's workshops and discovery sessions. I'm doing sketches and wireframes. So I'm getting to the bare bones of the design, the basics, pen and paper, before I'm moving into Figma, before I'm moving into XD and all the fancy tools. Start with the pen and paper. How does this come together? How does this feel? Does this make sense? It's trying to get out all of those ideas first. I'm doing UX flows and maps, which is basically just mapping the journey from end to end of this user using this product, right? Doing prototypes, which is basically just interactive prototypes of what this product could potentially look like and how it would interact so that you can present that to users and stakeholders to see how they interact with it. And that goes into testing. Doing a lot of testing with users, because as I said, what is key to this process is not so much about building it. It's about ensuring that this is meeting the need of the user. And the only way you can do that is if you test it with the user to get their feedback. So that's a core part of UX design and just the research that goes into that. Design QA is something I also do, which is spending some time to see if what we've designed is what is implemented, where the gaps are, how we can fix them, and that kind of thing, which is important. And I do a lot of work around process optimization. And I feel like I always say, like, I think people may have the perception that I'm spending all of this time just looking at the screen and moving into things, but a lot of my job is meetings and collaboration and talking to people and helping them to get their ideas out and that kind of thing. So that's it for me on a general sense of what I'm doing. Britt?
All right, so for me, my current role as a UI UX manager, I do a lot of team and people management, and you can see it's number one on the list because it's very important. So managing the task of the team, how the team collaborates, or collaborations inside the team as well as outside the team, and personal development of the team, and then development and growth of the team as a whole. And so with that comes a lot of people management, understanding people's different personality types, their behaviors, and getting them to work together, and ensuring that we achieve what we set out to achieve. Then there's a lot of strategy development, specifically looking at UX strategy for an organization. How can we achieve what we need to in terms of leveraging user experience, right? So today our user experience is good, but we want it to be great. And we're constantly looking at that strategy, reworking it, as technology in itself is a fast-paced field. Foundation building. So here in Jamaica, if you get onto a UI UX team now, a lot of what you're going to find you're doing is what we call design operations. So we're essentially putting, or design ops, we're putting a structure in place. And this has to do with the way we do work, how we interact with other teams, our processes, our artifacts, our standards, our guidelines, and all these nice fancy terms that you might have heard, such as design system, comes into play here, right? And we have to ensure that we have a solid foundation, otherwise we can't do our work as effectively and as efficiently as we want to. So I focus a lot on building that foundation. Mentorship is another big thing, right? So helping those, sharing the knowledge that I have acquired over the years and helping those who need the knowledge to achieve their highest potential. So all designers on the team as well. UX research, UI design, and all those activities that go into those broad processes that Janice went into. I want to say that for a managerial level, it depends on the size of your team though. The larger your team, the less you do hands-on UX and hands-on UI design. Right now, my team is smaller, so I do quite a bit of the tasks that Janice have mentioned earlier. Self-development, always have to develop oneself. It is very important. I read every day, books upon books, articles upon articles, because you have to ensure that you stay up to date with the industry. It is a part, or UX is not limited to technology, I should say, but in Jamaica, it's a big part of technology right now. And so technology is fast pacing, therefore we can't afford to fall behind in that regard. There are constantly new developments, new research on an international basis as well that we have to keep up with. And then it's a lot of presentations, it's a lot of educations, a lot of presentations to the business, ensuring that, of course, and the way I phrase my presentation, can't use so many jargons, design jargons and things like that, but have to actually speak the business's language. And educating people on exactly what we do, right? Because it is still a fairly new and young field here in Jamaica. So you'll find yourself telling people a lot of the time what you do and what they can do. Okay? Okay. All right. So let's get into some of the good and some of the gaps in the field, right? So the good is that businesses are recognizing there is value to be obtained by investment in UX, right? So businesses are realizing that it's not enough for us to just create an application and it does meet the functional and non-functional requirements, but our users actually have to be able to interact with the application. And they realize this especially because there's a lot of competition in the market. So if you have an application that does what it's supposed to do, but I don't have the best experience, it's not fitting what we call the user's mental model, which is essentially their expectations, right? Then that person can easily make a switch to somebody else in the market who probably does it better than you. The next one is a new career path. So because businesses are recognizing the value that you can actually achieve from investment in UX, it opens up careers, opportunities for many people in various different roles. So you'll see things like product designers or UI designers or UX designers or UI UX designers here in Jamaica, to list a few. Better digital products. So of course, that ties in hand with what I was saying earlier. If we are able to create a product, so in the product, we call it the conceptual model. If we're able to create a product that closely maps the user's mental model, their expectations, of course, then we can create a better digital experience overall and thus a better digital product. It's an evolving space here in Jamaica, right? So a couple years ago, we didn't have anything named a UI UX manager or design lead or some of these other roles like UX researcher, for example. Like what is that? But now we do. And it continues to evolve, especially on par with the international industry. So design for UX actually goes all the way, if you're in a company that is, all the way up to C-level with things like chief design officer, VP of experience, and so forth. And of course, there's remote opportunities. You are not limited to Jamaica. You can work from Jamaica in US-based companies, UK companies, wherever your heart desires. Thank you, technology. All right. So don't just limit yourself to only Jamaica, although we would like to build Jamaica. Remember that, right? But stretch your wings as far as you can go. Some of the gaps, there's a lack of investment in the space, and this is the harsh reality of it. Now, this ties in hand with Jamaica's overall reaction to technology, in the sense that you find a lot of companies in Jamaica want to invest in technology. They see the value in technology, but at the same time, they're a little bit scared of the technology, right? So you find that they're a little bit hesitant to go all the way in, and that's the same for UX. misunderstanding the role. Oh, you're UX designer, so you're a graphic designer. No, not the same thing, right? Or you're UX designer, you must paint pretty applications, right? So we hear that all the time, and that's all right. We understand that it's just a lack of education. So you have to be that voice for yourself. Tell people what it is that you do and tell it them in a way in which they can understand. So no jargons, right? And no emphasis on user research. So a lot of designers that come into the space, they'll have a more of a prominent focus on the actual visual aspect. But the visual aspect is informed by a lot of the research. We don't know what to fix. We don't know how to fix it. We don't know if we fix it, we could expect this amount of improvement if we don't do the research, right? There are limited opportunities in a sense that the space is growing steadily. So in comparison to, say, the developer space, you're going to see a lot more developer advertisements, right? Then you're going to see designer advertisement. But make no mistake, we are getting there. So it's growing steadily, right? And outsourcing of talent. A lot of companies outsource their talent now, and that's simply because the space is still so very young. So the more designers that come in, the more the companies will go ahead and use the local talent, as well as you have to bring that value to the table as a local designer, right? Because a company is not going to want to take you on or invest in you, I should say, if you yourself don't provide that high level of value in return, right? So that's some of the gaps. Before we progress, are there any questions? Any questions? Okay, all right. So let's go into skills and training.
Hold on. I think Shamika says she has a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I just came in. All right. I don't know what I missed. My question is pertaining to when you're building your prototypes, right? Right. If it's okay that we use, like, you know, the PFD file to build our prototypes, and we do it on a multi-page, where we do it in Photoshop and do it multi-page, and we build it as a portfolio rather than going on Adobe portfolio and building an existing one. Which one should I use? I don't know, because I use PDF file to build my portfolio. I don't know.
All right, so I'm going to say having a portfolio in PDF is great for on-hand exchange. So if you go to an interview and they want to look at it right there, then you have it printed out, that's great, right? But we are now in a time where technology, it has made a lot of our lives easier. So if it is, you can digitize your portfolio, and there are a lot of different platforms. If you wish, you can join our community. We have a resource section on Slack, right? There are a lot of different platforms in which you can leverage free too, to put your digital portfolio, and it helps you build it and maintain it a lot quicker, because we know that as designers, a big part of showing our work is with the presentation of that portfolio. So I would say, to just get to the point here, if you want to show somebody your work in terms of printed fashion, a PDF is good. But because we are now in this digital age, having a link that you can share over WhatsApp in an email is also very convenient.
Yes, you're not wrong. However, most people do not know that when you do a portfolio, it also generates a link. So you put that in your Google Drive, and then it said share to anybody who you want to view this link to. So basically, you're going to see the portfolio in a PDF file, same way, you know, because you shared that specific link. So it's not actually print. I'm going to actually print it out. It's actually sharing the PDF link.
Yeah, that's good too. You can share the link, but I'm saying that in order to make your life easier as well, if you leverage some of these online tools, it will help you update your portfolio easier. So you can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, right? Because like you said, it's a PDF, it's a link. But some of these tools, what they do is they offer you maintainability, scalability a lot easier. right? So it just make your life easier if you choose that route. Janice, you want to say something?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. And there's something I always say to designers when you're building your portfolios: use your portfolio itself. Remember, you're building a portfolio for an audience. The people are hiring you. Create an experience with your portfolio. Show your skills as a UX designer by designing your portfolio, because you are a digital designer. So your work in terms of how your portfolio is put together should show that. So I honestly feel like going the route of actually building out your portfolio on a web page or whatever, I think is a better route, but there's nothing wrong with having a PDF version as well. That's my take on it. That's my take on it.
Okay, great. There are, and I think you guys will also touch on tools later on too. There are a few more questions in the chat, so I'm going to go through the first two. Just noting that Jason says Dribbble is great for portfolio pieces as well. So first question from Nicholas: what are some of the UX designer user research questions that one might ask to inform decisions? And I'll just pin this one to it. Javier, what are some of the common KPIs for a UI UX job?
All right, so the first question, that is broad, right? And that is going to be dependent on what you are trying to figure out, your goals. It's going to be dependent on the business goals, right? And of course, a design project will also have certain objectives that it may meet, because it may be a case where you're not going to do everything up front in terms of design and development. Sometimes it's broken down in phases if you're doing the Agile manifesto and so forth, or just phases in general, phase 1, phase 2, right? So in terms of the user research, what is it, methods, I believe, was the question?
Questions, UX research questions.
Yes, questions. In terms of the questions. So essentially how it goes is that you will have a goal. For example, let me think real quick. You will have a goal of wanting to know how to better improve an onboarding process for an application, right? Then what you have to first do is, if there's an existing onboarding process, you look at that and you may say, okay, maybe we need to ask questions about what are people's general thoughts on the onboarding process. Something as broad as that could help you figure out what pain points are. And then from figuring out those pain points, you delve a little bit deeper and you say, okay, why is it that you are experiencing difficulty understanding the terminology here? Is it a little bit too broad off, and so forth? And you start to build questions like that. So it begins with your goals and objectives. There's no set questions, so to speak, right? And if you're having a hard time deciding what questions to put in, Google it. There are many, many articles, many, many templates for which you can pull on. In terms of the metrics now, that's a lot too, right? But there are many different metrics you can go into. If you're doing usability, some of the metrics we do is like task of completion, right? How many steps does it take for you to complete a task? There are other different standards. So we do pull from other fields like customer experience field. You might have heard something like the NPS. That's a metric we look at. We also look at the customer satisfaction metric. We have a questionnaire called the usability questionnaire, the system usability questionnaire, SUS. There's several different metrics. So what it really comes down to is you're not going to go out and measure everything, right? And you're not going to go out and research everything. We'd be here all day. But what we're going to do is prioritize, and we're going to say, what are the key things from our list of metrics? What are the key things that we want to measure? What are the key things that are going to help us show that we have improved from where we need to go? And I would say from personal experience, what helps is because when you start to read and research and build yourself, if you build your own kind of toolbox. So as you come across another metric, you add it to the toolbox, right? You come across another method, you add it to the toolbox. And from there, whenever you get a new project, you can look back in your toolbox and you say, you know what, this one would be best suited for this project. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Brittney. Two more questions. What's the process to get for a more experienced person to become a mentor? So like, what's the process for gaining a mentor, is that something that's available within the community? And for those of us who are new to UI UX and want to branch out, Carrie Ann, could you clarify what you mean by branch out? You can unmute if you'd like to. And the second part of our question is, are there specific projects you'd suggest for us to do to build a portfolio?
All right, so I'm going to take this really quickly because we have some more stuff to get through, and I think we touch on a lot of these things. But what I will say is join the UX UI network, please. That's the first thing I'm going to say, because we have people there who we can connect with. The mentorship has been one of the things that we've been considering doing, and it may be something that we do this year. But outside of that, even if you don't have like a formal one-on-one mentor, there are lots of people in the group who are willing to help. You can ask you questions. We'll send you some resources, or we'll help you to figure out a problem. So I would say that's right now locally, that's the best place to join. There's also a mentorship program called ADP List, and I don't know if maybe I'll be able to drop it in the chat. And they are an international group of mentors for UX designers. So I'll try to find that and I'll drop it in the chat. In terms of specific projects usually that we do to help build a portfolio, I don't think they are specific projects. What I think is that you need to, in your portfolio, figure out how to show how you think about the process of design. It's not just about building the screen. Here's a screen. That tells me nothing about you as a designer in terms of how you think about the process. That's what I would say. Focus on showing how you work, showing your workflow, showing how you think, showing how you get to your solution and why your solution works. So that's what I would say for that. I don't know if we can save some of these questions, Latifah, until the end. Because I think
yes, I'm definitely going to look.
Yeah, we're going to answer some of these.
Yes, in the interest of time, we're just going to keep the other questions until the end, but you can send them in the chat if you have any burning questions during the rest of the presentation.
All right, great. So we are going to jump into some skills and training very briefly. I saw some questions about skills and training, so I guess we are right on time. All right, so I'm going to touch on some technical skills and some soft skills. And this is not in any means an extensive list. This is just probably the top 4 areas that I could think of or that we could think of to share with you. All right, so the first one that's here is wireframing and prototyping. And that's essentially, those are essentially design blueprints. That's the foundation of your design, especially when we're talking about wireframing, which is basically drawing out what is the structure of this app I'm going to build, or this page I'm going to build, or this website I'm going to build. That's what wireframing is. Prototyping usually is a step after that, which can be different levels of fidelity, which is like low fidelity, medium fidelity, high fidelity. And it's really just creating an interactive experience, right? Trying to mirror what the actual product will look like. And prototypes are useful for mainly 2 things: testing with the users and also showing your ideas to stakeholders to get buy-in. The other thing that is really critical is research and testing. You have to have research skills as a designer. It's like a critical part of you being able to be a good designer and to be able to be on the international level of how designers operate. You have to be able to understand how users think. And I'll talk about empathy, but understand how users think, understand what they want, even if they can't directly say what they want, so that you can create these experiences that meet their needs. All right. Visual communication. So this is where like the graphic skills come in, right? But it's essentially learning how to, or understanding how to apply all of those design skills, design principles. We're talking about layout, color, typography, etc., to create a visually appealing experience, one, and to make sure that people can actually interact with your product very easily. And the final area, which goes into interaction design, which, to be honest, interaction design does take in a lot of these elements as well. But interaction design is really looking at where and how a product is going to be used. You're looking at context, you're looking at device, you're looking at the mental model of this person. How, based on their experiences and all these environmental factors, will they be able to use this product? How can I create a flow that feels intuitive and feels natural for this user to go through? And there are several other skills. UX writing is super important. Information architecture, being able to code can be beneficial, HTML, CSS, so that you can understand the limitations. Project management, UX strategy. There are a whole range of other skills, but I think these are some of the fundamental technical skills. Soft skills. Let's look at some of those. Curiosity. Personally, I think this is probably one of, for me, a top skill. Because I think, and in my experience, I've seen where the good designers are the ones who want to know why. Like, it's not just about, okay, do this thing. Okay, it's about, why are we doing it this way? Why are we even solving this problem? Who asked for this? You know, you have to be able to really question things. You can't be somebody who just, they say do this and you just do it. You have to think about what is the reason and the rationale behind this. How do I go about even approaching this? What can I improve, etc., etc. Communication, I mentioned earlier, a big part of my job, and as Britt mentioned as well, is talking to people. It's defending and communicating design decisions. It's about listening actively to your users so that you can get that feedback and create a better product. It's listening to stakeholders, understanding their frustrations, being able to meet in the middle. You have to be a good communicator to be a good designer, because if you're not, there is always going to be a gap, right? The user is not going to get what they want. Stakeholders are going to be upset about maybe the product. So there's a big gap if you're not able to communicate the why, the how, the what around design. Open-mindedness. Now, when you start out in design, in UX design, you'll realize that a lot of times what you think is your best idea is not the best idea. You have to be willing to take criticism, and you have to be willing to listen to a developer say, this cute, but this not gonna work. You understand? This don't fit. Like, you have to be really open-minded, really willing to take feedback and figure out how to use that feedback to improve what you already have or to build something new. You have to be willing to learn and explore new ideas. That's really, really critical as a designer. You can't be just too tied to what you think is right. And you have to remember that most of the time when you're designing something, you are not the user. So your opinion is not even the most important. It's what does the user think. Then the final one is empathy, which is a very big one. And empathy comes through communication and like collaboration with users. Being able to put yourself in a user's shoes is such an important skill to have. If you can do that, if you can remove yourself from the process and remove me, and what the business wants all the time, and if you can put yourself in the user's shoes, you'll be able to create really, really strong products. So I think those are some of my top soft skills and technical skills for a designer to have. And then in terms of education and training. So this one is a touchy one. Britt mentioned she has a degree in information systems, right? And she has a comp sci degree. I have a marketing degree. What I want to say to you guys, and I guess most people are in tech in this group or who are in this chat, you will understand, or you should understand, that the field of technology grows consistently, and you cannot rely on having a bachelor's degree or a master's degree and think so you know all this full width of things, because things change so rapidly. That's the first thing. The second part is there aren't a lot of formalized like degree programs for UX. There just aren't, because it's still a new field. As much as it's been around for years, it's still a new field. So you may be able to find a UX degree or a human computer interaction degree or interaction design degree, but they are, first of all, not in Jamaica. I haven't seen one in the Caribbean. So you definitely have to go to another country or even do it online in another country to get that. But what I would say is that's not a hindrance. You don't need a degree in these things to do this job. What you need is obviously some training. You can do online courses and certifications. I'm going to ask Britt to drop a link that has some of the resources that we recommend that you can check out. And guys, don't get paralyzed with which one is better than which one. Just take one, just start, see how it goes. If you need more information, take another one. That is my recommendation. Don't get stuck and caught up in that. There are a lot of boot camps. Boot camps tend to be a little bit pricier, but the boot camps tend to also give you a lot more mentorship. And they also give you, they also tend to push you to execute on real projects, right? So you can check that route as well. And then the last one, which is super important locally, is transferable skills. If you're in a marketing, you have transferable skills because you get used to the research and talk to customer and get them feedback and that kind of thing. If you're in customer service, the same. If you're in comp sci, the same. If you're a developer, the same. You have transferable skills, whether it be your knowledge of how products are built structurally and technically, how people think, etc. So think about what are those skills that I have, even from the list that I just shared, that I can transfer to help me progress in this career. So that's what I have to say about education and training. I won't go into specifics. Check out the resource list. There are quite a few that you can you can look at. And Britt's gonna talk about salary.
All right, let's get to the money. That's the part that a lot of people like to ask us a lot of the time. What does the salary look like currently in the market? So I'm going to share with you some data that we gathered on very early last year. So this data could even change now, and we are working on updating that. Stay tuned. All right. So if we look here, we can see that if you have around 1 to 2 years in the field, you can expect to make 2 to 4 million Jamaican. And this is gross, by the way, 3 to 5, 5 to 8 million. Less than a year, 1 to 2, 6 to 9, 5 to 6, and 10 to 15, 7 to 8. Now you might be looking at this and you might be going, something not right here. Allow me to explain. Number one is that in Jamaica, when you normally apply for a job under the UX field, right? The HR department does not necessarily know how to price your job or the offer to give you, right? So a lot of the time, they are looking at other resources, and sometimes the resources are not reliable. So what does that mean for you? That means for you that you have to educate yourself on what you're worth, all right? So how do you educate yourself on what you're worth? Well, you ask people in the space, and I know Jamaica here kind of taboo when people ask you, what's your salary? They don't really want to tell you a number, but you don't need an exact number. You just need a range, so to speak. You can also look at fields that are comparable to you or running parallel to you, like development fields. What does an entry developer make, for example? And you can also look at foreign, in terms of the America and UK, but adjust it for the Jamaican context, all right? So that's one of the issues that we face here, and that is why we also developed the community to help rectify this issue. The second issue is that you see the years of experience, but I want to emphasize this, that a company is compensating you based on your value, right? So somebody with 10 years of experience may not bring as much value as somebody with 5 years of experience, for example, right? Just because you say you've been in this field for many years, it may not mean that you have been involving yourself or doing the things necessary for you to be competitive in this field. So always keep that in mind, that when you are negotiating
it's 7 o'clock.
The salary part of your compensation, that you are really bringing a certain level of value and asking a company to compensate you based on that value. Now, this is the important part. I know a lot of younger professionals, they're like, benefits, who cares? But benefits are important, right? They help us with our lives, our day-to-day lives, and make things easier for us. So some of the top benefits that we see in the field are health insurance, lunch allowance, fitness, education, and training is a big one. It is a big one. Doing courses, online courses, your company will offer that to you. Paid sick leave, uniform allowance, and so forth, right? Let's get into the fun parts. Tips for beginners, all right? So if you are someone who is just getting into the UI UX field, this is the part for you. 3 things stand out. The first one is complete your own projects. 2, immerse yourself in the field. And 3, keep learning. So what do we mean by this? Complete your own projects, DIY, do it yourself. Do not wait for someone to present an opportunity for you or to you for you to execute your skills, right? You want to be a UX researcher, you want to be a UI designer, and so forth and so forth. Build your own application, look for your own problem. And in doing so, you can even use that, that kind of case and put it in your portfolio. Second is design challenges. Now, the reason why design challenges are so great is because they kind of take you outside of your head. Sometimes when designers start to get into the field, they focus a lot on the visual aspect of design. But design is not about the visual aspect alone. The bigger picture here is about solving problems. And design challenges push you into that space of solving a problem. They're quick, they're easy, a lot of free ones online, and you can do them over and over. And over time, you find that your skills become better, faster, and even impressive, right? The third one is build a portfolio. Show your work. You probably have heard that terminology somewhere else, but show your work. We don't know what you can do, and we have the opportunity in a field like this. We don't know what you can do unless you show us, right? Especially when you're going for your first job. Bring your portfolio. We mentioned a little bit earlier on being able to present your portfolio on an online platform. as Janice said earlier, treat that like a UX project in itself. And when you're building this portfolio, remember to show your process. It's not enough for you to put the screens and say, I work on this job and all of that, right? You want to tell us what your role was, what are some of the methodologies you went through, and just detail your line of thinking, but not an essay. Paragraphs, a paragraph or two is fine, right? The next thing is immerse yourself, right? What do we mean by that? Practice, practice, and more practice. You will never get better at something if you just know. You actually have to do it. You never have to show anybody your practice. That's perfectly fine, but you practice to become better at your craft, right? Engage with the community, go to conferences, meetups, events held by the UX, UI design and network community, right? That's how you meet people. And to tell you the truth, sometimes it can be intimidating approaching people if you're going to approach people on LinkedIn or even in the community. But guess what? Nobody's judging you. All right. It's like you go to the gym and you're working out and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be here because everybody's looking. Nobody's looking at you. Right. Just go ahead and do it. Say, hi, I saw you XYZ or wherever. And I would just like a little advice on this. Trust me, everybody in the community is willing to help each other because we have the common goal of growing the space, right? And 3, mentorship. Maybe you met somebody, you went to an event, you heard about somebody or you saw somebody and you say, you know what, I think this person could be a good mentor to me. Reach out to that person, see if they're willing to mentor you. A lot of our senior designers in our community are actually open to mentorship and they do mentorship, right? Sometimes a potential mentor may say, I can't really mentor you right now, but that's okay. We have a lot of projects doing. Check back with them 2 months' time. You never know, right? You have to put yourself out there. The last one is keep learning. You always have to keep learning. Like I mentioned earlier, I read every day and I read broadly. Don't just read in the Jamaican context, the US context, the UK context, because that's where you get ideas and you can apply them to the Jamaican context. Watch a lot of videos. There are great platforms and overseas communities that offer great resources in those videos, and observe. You don't always have to fall on your face to learn a lesson. You could observe someone else, their journey, and make notes, and you say, okay, well, in my journey, maybe I'm going to adjust to get a better outcome in that sense, right? So Janice is going to speak now on a bit of the future outlook for the industry. Where are we heading?
Yeah. Thanks, Britt. So we're wrapping up now. But I wanted to just share for persons who are interested, where is this going? Why do you want me to be a UX designer, Janice? Why are you telling me this? I'm going to share some international stats. So in the UK in 2020, a report came out showed that there was a 289% increase in employer interest in UX design. That doesn't even make sense to me, that number, right? But it's because of what Britt mentioned very early. It's because businesses are seeing the value of design. And so because of that, it's a weird little dynamic where there are not enough designers who have the requisite skills to fill the positions, and they're like just a very, very high demand of people who want designers. The second is there's an 18% growth, or there is going to be an 18% growth over 2021 last year to 2025 in opportunities for UX designers. This is a very big number, like if you take it within context. So you can expect the field to continue to grow. There are always thousands of job openings internationally. And on LinkedIn, it was in the top 5 in demand skills for 2021. I don't think this is going to change for 2022. I think it's going to get even more as we continue to explore the possibilities of technology. Now, locally, we don't have a lot of data. That's a big problem because you need data to make decisions. And so our group has launched a survey. I'm pretty sure this community has shared that survey. So if you know anybody who is a designer, guys, share it. So I can have these stats the next time we talk to tell you what's happening in the space. But anecdotally, what I can tell you is that recruiters have a very hard time filling the roles. I'm tired of your people, so we can't find nobody. The people that we interview them do already. You understand? They are having a hard time filling roles. There are roles that go unfilled for a good time. And it's 2 parts. It's one, because persons coming into the field tend to think, oh, this is easy. I'm just throw them 2 boxes here together, put 1 button, good. But it's a lot more than that. It's a lot more nuanced than that. And persons I don't think are taking the time to really learn the feel and understand what they need to know. The second part of it is I think employers obviously want talent now. They want you to be ready, right? But the truth is our space is so young that we will have to train people on the job to really, develop into those super designers that we need in Jamaica. So that's two parts of it. Research is a very big gap in Jamaica as well. We don't have researchers. We don't have dedicated, not that I know of. I haven't met a dedicated UX researcher. Typically, it's a UX designer that if they even are doing research, they're doing it, right? But that's a big gap. And it's a big gap because we're making uninformed decisions. So you're putting out designs without any data behind it. So that's a problem. But as I said, do the survey. If you know a designer, let us help to get that data so that we can tell you more about very specifically salary. We can tell you more about where the space is going, and you can look forward to that report this year. The second area I want to touch on is emerging opportunities. So somebody asked a really good question. He talked about an AI tool, UI. Honestly, is it just Wizard? I think it's Wizard. It's pretty clever. But there's a tool that uses AI basically to create designs where you just tell it what you want and it creates a screen. It's not as evolved yet. I think it's in the younger stages, and there are other tools that are very similar to that, right? That are essentially automating the process of creating visual design, mock-ups and that kind of thing. I don't think, to answer your question, Jason, I don't think that it replaces designers. In the same way, for example, in graphic design, we have a lot of tools that make it easy to design. Canva. Canva is a great tool. But now, much Canva because I use the presentation and most of the presentation, right? But there is always a need for designers. For example, there are designers who create the templates that you use in Canva. Without them, we would be building from scratch. So you have to think about even the input that goes into even building these tools that make it easier to automate design. The second part is, remember that UX design field is not just about the visuals. You still need people who understand people. AI is not at the place where it's that great at understanding people and feelings and emotions as yet. So I don't think we have to worry about being out of a job. And in any case, we're going to be the ones designing the AI tools, so no worries. So emerging opportunities, voice and conversation design, Alexa, Google, Siri. I think my Alexa actually answering, right? These are tools that are becoming more prevalent, using your voice to activate experiences. So that's a very, very big field in terms of a niche that you want to go into. If you're looking at that, are you interested in that? Extended reality, which is what the broad term that covers augmented reality and virtual reality. Whole heap of work there to be done to enhance the field. How do we help people to have great experiences that are not graphical, that they're not looking at, but they're activating with their body language and their voice and that kind of thing. As I mentioned, designing for and with AI, lots of things to explore, especially the ethical part of how AI is used. Web3, definitely, how do we as designers contribute to this idea of a secure and transparent web? How do we do that? So that's something to consider. No-code tools, which open a world of opportunities for designers. Bubble, Webflow, all of those Wix kind of, but those two I mentioned specifically because it allows you as a designer to not need development skills to carry a product from start to finish. Great opportunity. It will continue to grow. Get familiar with those platforms. And 6, as I mentioned before, remote work. You're not limited to Jamaica. It might be harder to get in, but the world is opened up. You can apply for other opportunities. And that's really it. I think we're just gonna go into some takeaways, and then you guys we can answer whatever questions are left. So for me, my 3 key takeaways: UX design is not about making things pretty. Visual is a very critical part, but it's not about making it pretty because it can be pretty and very hard to use. It's about creating pleasant experiences, right? It's wholesome, making the products useful, usable, accessible. Second thing, if you're getting into design, you don't have to be an artist. You don't have to come from no stellar graphic design. You don't have to. It helps, but you don't have to. What you need to understand is how people think. You need to understand psychology, and you need to understand design principles. Finally, for me, now is the time to switch to design. While the space is young, while we're growing, while the opportunities continue to emerge, get in and be very good before it's oversaturated. That's it for me. So Britt, what are your takeaways?
Takeaways is that design is evolving. So like I said, mentioned very early in the presentation, a while ago, we didn't have anything named design leaders, and now we have design leaders, right? So it will continue to evolve. The niche roles will also continue to emerge out, like an interaction designer, for example, here in Jamaica, as companies continue to invest in the space. Two, know your value, right? You have to know your value and what you bring to the table in order to have that conversation with whomever is going to compensate you, right? And three, start where you are today. You don't have to wait. You do not need to be an expert, right, to get into design. You simply have to start, try it, and continue to improve on it over and over again. That is how you get better at anything in life, for that matter. So last thing we want to say is join our community. Here are our handles on LinkedIn and Twitter, right? And we just want to thank you for listening to us today. We hope you learned something, got a great insight on the industry, and we hope to see all the potential designers very soon. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittney and Janice. We definitely have learned a ton. There are lots of resources have been shared, and I hope that everyone has been collecting the links in the chat. Just a reminder for those who may feel a little overwhelmed at this point, we are going to post the recording for this on our community forum, along with all the links in the chat. So if you are worried about losing those links, and for those persons who may have been tuning into the YouTube live stream, you can access the resource links from the community forum. I think there are about 2 or 3 questions that we need to address before we can end. John Daniel Coombs from earlier asked, how do you gain inspiration for building projects or your portfolio?
I'm gonna take that, Britt. So I'm gonna tell you my strategy. So the portfolio that I had was built on UX Folio. Drop the link to that. I think it's okay. I think it's an okay platform. You can use Behance, Dribble, all of these other ones as well. My inspiration, first of all, the case studies that I had in my portfolio were from projects I've done, whether they're paid projects or projects that I'm doing to volunteer to build my experience. In terms of your inspiration, I follow most of the people I follow on social media are designers, because I want to know, why are you so good at this? How can I become so good at this? So I follow a lot of designers. I look at how they structure their portfolios as well, so that I can have a better portfolio. That's what I would say. For your portfolio, you want to just start with a project, right? We shared some link with design challenges. They can use those to build out what your first project is going to be. If you're taking a course, usually they have a prompt as well for you to do a project. If you have a problem, if there is an app that you use that not solving the problem that you wanted to solve, let's say a reminder, I'm not reminding you efficiently, how can I fix this for me? Use your everyday experiences as well, and the experiences that people have to create projects for yourself that you put in your portfolio. That's it from me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll also add to that. One of the things that you see a lot in portfolios is the concept of cases. So they'll take a common Jamaican application that we probably all know this is not the best at which it could be, and they'll dissect it and rebuild it. And I should also say that if you do it well enough, you can even approach the owners of those applications, and maybe even get yourself a nice freelance opportunity.
Yes, I do. I've definitely seen persons go that route, Brittney. Final question that I'm seeing is, can you be a UI designer and not a EX designer? Because what if you are not good with colors, but you know about wireframes or designs?
All right, so you can go into any role. So like we mentioned earlier, UX is broad. So it's UI designer, it's UX designer, it's product designer, and so forth and so forth. If you only want to focus on the UI side, which is more the visual side, wireframe, prototyping, and the visual elements, pulling on the existing visual art industry and so forth, then you can go ahead and do that. if there's an aspect, and there sounds like there was an aspect in which you are not that strong in visual design, then work on improving that aspect, right? You have to understand, as designers, we will have eventually over our career many skills. We would have gained many skills, had many experiences in many areas. What you're going to find is that there's going to be one or two of them, or three of them, just depends, that you're really good at, right? You're not going to be good at everything, right? So don't be too worried about having to be an expert at every little thing, but more so build a better understanding of everything and then hone in on the areas that interest you the most. So yeah, you can definitely just be a visual designer. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I think he was asking the opposite as well, because he was asking if I'm not good with colors or fonts and typography. Here's what I would say to that. You don't have to be a specialist in every aspect of UX because it's so broad. I do think you have to understand design principles. How are you going to be a good designer if you don't even understand design principles? So you should aim to build your skills. If you want to go more into the research and the strategic part of UX, you can. But I think even locally right now, most people, because it's so young, most people are looking for those who have some good understanding of design principles and can balance that with the other aspects. So locally, I think you're going to be in a little bit of a pickle trying to do only one. But I will say, learn the different aspects. If you want to specialize, become very, very, very strong in one. But I think you do have to have a good knowledge and a good understanding of how to apply the different areas. And you can just do that through challenges. Do some challenges, do some courses. Guys, I think you should if you're starting out, so that you can understand those little basic principles. Yeah. We're not hearing you. Latif, I think you're talking. Is me on?
My apologies. So for those persons who want to enhance their portfolio with certifications, are there any specific certifications or design programs that you would recommend?
I am very finicky about this. I'll allow Brit to answer, but for me, I've done a couple, and I think when I go through them or when I started, I realized a lot of them are very similar in terms of context, in terms of content that they provide. So I wouldn't say do this versus this because this is better. What I would say is that right now there is a Google Design certification, which is very big and very popular and everybody wants to do. You can take that one. It's on Coursera. You know how Coursera works, you have to pay per month. You can take that one, but there are also a lot of other courses on Coursera that you can take. Personally, right now, I'm a part of Interaction Design Foundation. They have a membership, which is like, I think 100 and something US per year. And they have a lot of courses that you can access through that membership. They have a lot of resources and literature that you can read. But I would definitely say, just take a course and start. If you're a beginner, take a beginner course. All of them have basically the same content. That has been my personal experience.
Yeah, I will say if you're looking at it from the recruitment side, so maybe you're asking it, I don't know, I'm making the assumption of being competitive. I have never looked on an application and go, yes, like this certification, that certification. There is no best certification that we are looking for. It's more so the context of that certification. So if you're applying for a user experience role, and say you did a certification in user research, regardless of who one of the many vendors are, it tells me that you have some basic training and basic understanding in your user research. So it's more so have to do with the context as opposed to this institution is the one that you should get it from. There are free versions and there are more easily accessible versions, like the Google one Janice mentioned. That is a very popular one now that we see. But then there are other nice, I'm going to say subscription versions like Interaction Design. That one is one that I think is pretty good as well.
Thank you. And then the final question that we're going to take today based on the time is, what are your opinions on UX UI frameworks such as material design or flat design? That one might be a little broad.
All right, I'm gonna say if I see another application built in material design, oh my God. So the material design is built on, just like any one of these frameworks, any one of them you look at, they're built on certain guidelines and standards, right? Specifically talking to things like accessibility standards. And they're not necessarily bad in a sense. They're just tools at the end of the day, right? So if your application can look really great with any one of these frameworks, but still be very poor, it's not so much about, okay, I'm going to apply a framework, it's going to look great, we go to market. It's more so, did we solve the problem? Did we make a great experience? And using a framework kind of does ensure that it looks modern, because they do keep up these frameworks. So that's the advantage of using a framework. So if you're even a developer, right, and you don't have the extensive expertise in design, then leveraging a framework like that is great, right? And just like how in the design field now, if you don't have the expertise in coding, there's things like Webflow. So you see a crossover a lot of, well, as we go forward and advance, you see a crossover. But the key takeaway here is that the framework is in itself reliable material design built on accessibility standards, but it's not so much about, okay, I'm going to apply this framework, it looks great, ship it off. It really is more about solving the problem at the end of the day. And that's something that we really want you to take away, that design, this industry, is not just about dribbling, dribblize your life out, right? It's, you have to solve the problem, right?
Yep, agreed. I have nothing else to add to that.
Awesome. Okay, great. So as we close off the presentation, I just want to ask, are you guys open to freelance services? Would you like to share where persons may reach you if they are interested in garnering your services? And a quick reminder that the link to join the UX UI Designer Network is in the chat for those persons who are wondering.
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm not taking freelance opportunities right now, but if you need some help consultation-wise, I can help. If you have some question as designers, you can reach out to me, join the group, message me on Slack, message me on LinkedIn, or on Telegram when you join the group. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm open to freelance opportunities. You can find me on LinkedIn. I would say if I take a while to respond, it's because I'm busy, I'm not ignoring you. All right, you can also find me in the developer network. If you join, you can send me a direct message over Telegram. I'll respond there as well, and Slack. Same. Let me try.
Awesome. We do understand that you guys will be busy. And I do recommend that anyone who has questions that are design related, the best way for you to get your answers are to just join the UI UX designer community. And for those persons who haven't, because we do have a lot of new persons, even though Jamaican developers has shared the UI UX survey, I know that we have a couple new persons on this call. So the link for that is also in the chat. And of course, the recording for this meeting is going to be available or made available immediately afterwards. Thank you so much, Janice and Brittney, for sharing your experiences with us. A lot of tips, a lot of experience, so much resources, and we definitely cannot thank you enough for making this career day a success. We do apologize for any glitches that we've had during the call, and we're glad to have so many persons on board and know that so many persons are interested in UI UX design. We're definitely seeing great things coming for the community in the coming weeks and the coming years. So thank you so much for spending the time with us. At this time, I'm going to invite Paul Allen, if he's still on the call. I don't think he's with us anymore, or O'Shane, just to speak about EduFocal's UX designer role. I know that they shared a job post earlier today. O'Shane?
Hi, good evening, everyone. So I don't necessarily know the details of the role because I recently got introduced to it, but I know they are looking for UI UX. I dropped the link in the chat, and we are aiming to post it on the community forum, in our community chat, and of course the job board that we built, Seeker, so that you can find out more about the role, the salary, and what the job has to offer, or edifical overall. But as soon as I get more details, I'll post it, as well as in the Telegram job group that Gavin created. So you can look out for more information in the coming days.
Thank you, Shane. Okay, so once again, we'd like to thank everyone for attending. We encourage you to join our community at community.jamaicans.dev or join our Telegram channel. The link for both are in the chat, but we'll also send them around in all the various groups where we've marketed the event directly after this. And just a reminder that we do have 2 more upcoming events for the month of January. Our first event, or the first of which, is going to be this Saturday, and it's going to be focused on open source internship opportunities for 2022. This event is primarily for students who are interested in participating in the Google Summer of Code program or Calico Challenge this summer. And our second or final event for January is going to be our demo day event, which we'll be hosting next week. We do have 2 presenters that are ready. And of course, if you are interested, if you're working on any projects, whether it's design related or development related, you can reach out to us via all our channels to book a date for one of our demo days. With that, I'd like to thank you all again for attending, for being very interactive and asking questions. We certainly hope that you've learned a lot and that you'll be taking the information from this meetup to hone your skill, advance your craft, and we hope that you continue to help us to grow and build the Jamaican tech community. And with that, I adjourn. Take care, everyone, and keep safe.
Okay.